Welcome to session 10 of the Maximum Happiness course, Emotions and Feelings. As feelings and emotions start life in the mind within our brain, there is naturally some overlap between this session and the next two sessions, the power of the brain and the power of the mind. Research into the brain, mind, emotions and feelings advances so rapidly. If you're following this session in the guidebook that came with the course, you'll hear me include some additional information that doesn't appear in the transcript notes that accompany the course. Emotions can be thought of as bodily changes that prompt us to act. They have evolved to get us to do what we have to do in order to survive and pass our genes on to the next generation. To reinforce their effectiveness, emotionally triggered actions are associated with pleasant or unpleasant conscious feelings. Emotions tend to be short-lived, lasting a few hours at most, but they can lead to more persistent conditions that we call moods. Of all the outputs of our brains, emotions are perhaps the most mysterious. We know them when we feel them and seek them out in our lives for choice of entertainment, for example. Yet, while we all know how they feel and are remarkably good at recognizing them in others, the whys and hows of emotion raise some important questions about what it means to be human. The anatomy of emotions. Emotions are generated in the limbic system, a cluster of structures that lies beneath the cortex within the brain. The system evolved very early in mammalian history. In humans, it is closely connected with the more recently evolved cortical areas. The two-way traffic between the limbic system and the cortex allows emotions to be consciously felt and conscious thoughts to affect emotions. Each emotion is produced by a different network of brain modules, including the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland. These control the hormones that produce physical reactions such as increased heart rate and muscle contraction. Basic emotions. Research suggests that there are four basic physiologically distinct conscious feelings or emotions: anger, fear, happiness and sadness. What will appear on screen now is an image of those four emotional feelings. Aspects of these combine and allow us to feel a range of emotions. Broadly, emotions are positive or negative experiences which vary in their intensity. Different emotional states are associated with particular physiological changes that affect how a person behaves and thinks. For example, we view the world differently when we are relaxed and when we are afraid. This coordination of physiology, behaviour and thought with feeling is what makes us adapt our behaviour in response to events. Fear and anger. Fear and anger trigger the release of hormones in the body that prepare us to deal with the threats that might come our way. In the modern world, however, long-term anxiety can cause overactivation of the sympathetic nervous system and lead to health problems. Fight or flight. When we see a possible threat to the safety of ourselves or others, such as a snake or a rat, and here's an image, A visual information travels to our amygdala, a tiny part of the brain that processes emotion. The amygdala sends a signal to the hypothalamus, which activates the sympathetic nervous system, preparing the body to react to danger, to fight or flight, if you like. The hypothalamus also sends signals to the pituitary gland and adrenal glands, which secrete hormones such as cortisol and adrenaline. The combined effect of these pathways is to initiate our fight or flight reflex, which prepares our bodies to attack or run away. Feelings versus emotions. Let's get back to basics. What is the difference between a feeling and an emotion? There are many long and complex answers to this question, and most of them are totally incomprehensible, if I'm honest. So having waded through technical books on the brain, hundreds of articles on psychology and physiology, spent hours on the internet in search of a simple, easy to understand solution, I reverted back to the faithful old dictionary. And a feeling in the dictionary came back as an emotional state or reaction. And an emotion was described as a strong feeling such as joy, love, anger or fear. But even the compilers of the world's most respected dictionaries can't seem to distinguish between the two. These are two different words. Whilst they may overlap in their meaning, it's important to be able to separate the two distinctly if we are to fully understand their respective effects on our happiness. After all the research is done, the answer seems to be a subjective one, a matter of your own opinion. But a favourite conclusion is this: an emotion is the actual experience of happiness, love, sadness, fear, anger. A feeling describes the actual changes that occur as a result of that emotion. So this is supported by the physiological explanation of the components of emotion. The components of emotion. 1. The subjective experience of happiness, sadness, anger, and so on. 2. The physiological changes which occur involving the autonomic nervous system, the ANS as it's known, and the endocrine system, over which we have little, if any, conscious control. However, we may become aware of some of their effects, such as butterflies in the stomach, or goose pimples, or sweating. And finally, 3. The associated behaviour, such as smiling, crying, frowning, running away, or being frozen to the spot. The second and third that we've mentioned there are sometimes categorised together as bodily reactions, with the former being called visceral and the latter being called skeletal. This distinction relates to the ANS, the autonomic nervous system, and the central nervous system, the CNS, respectively. However, whilst running away is largely under voluntary CNS control, crying or sweating definitely are not. Yet, in all three cases, we infer another person's emotional state from these observable behaviours. The autonomic nervous system acts quickly, hundredths of a second, sending nerve impulses immediately to the parts of our body for reaction. The endocrine system, meaning inside secretions, works through endocrine glands that secrete special chemicals into the blood system, affecting other glands or the body generally. And this is a slower process. Dopamine excites and is involved in movement, attention and learning. Serotonin is released during arousal, dreaming, moods, appetite and sensitivity. The endocrine system generally reacts more slowly than the ANS and has a more long-term effect on behaviour. Feelings then are sensations, the means by which our intuition conveys information to us about our inner and outer circumstances, such as conflict, turmoil, a person or an event. So, how do feelings work? Well, when we feel, our personal energy resonates with the energy of the event or the person causing the feeling. This is similar to how our eardrums vibrate at the same frequency of a sound that we hear, enabling us to hear that sound. When we experience an event or interaction with someone, pleasant or otherwise, our bodily systems record our reactions by generating feelings that have the same empathetic resonance. Another example of this is when you strike a tuning fork in close proximity to a second tuning fork. The second tuning fork will vibrate in resonance with the first. The next bit is discussed in detail in the session on energy later in the course. When you walk into a crowded room filled with happy, cheerful people, they are vibrating at a collective frequency that exerts influence on everything and everyone in the surrounding area and vicinity. Unless you have a high level of resistance or are affected by some stronger vibrating trauma, your body will receive signals of that happiness within the room, and your nervous system will send signals to your body to resonate at the same level. You start to receive those signals and you begin to experience a sensation of empathetic or sympathetic resonance. You're experiencing a feeling of happiness as a result of the happiness that's in the room. In this example, the emotion in the room was happiness. It exerted its vibrating influence and you felt happy. Feelings are not the same as emotions. Feelings exist only in the current moment and as a response to present circumstances. Emotions linger. Our nervous systems need time to disassociate from them, particularly those emotions that affect our physiological state, the ones that cause muscle tension or spasms, surges and draining of our adrenaline, or changes in the heart rate and our breathing. Feelings are subtle and light, so that we have to consciously listen for them. Emotions are more direct and can even be disruptive because of the physiological effects that they have on our system. Feelings do not release energy. They are simplistic activity. Emotions have the distinct characteristic of releasing energy for use in choices such as fight or flight or some other physical act. Feelings are simply vibrations of energy. It's only our perception, interpretation and judgment of them that causes us to separate them as good or bad feelings. When we interpret and judge feelings, we move into uncharted waters. When we try to judge a feeling, we obstruct their free flow by giving them a value and create uncomfortable blockages in our energy. Feelings are messages from within us. Feelings tell us whether we're on track or off course. Contentment tells us we're getting what we need. Discomfort tells us we're unfulfilled. Feelings guide our choices and confirm their correctness or otherwise by the pleasure we experience. When we can see an overview of our general feeling strategy, we really get to learn who we really are as people. We define ourselves to some extent by what we like, and our feelings determine what we like to do. Feelings help us to live in this universe. Feelings are part of our survival mechanism, alerting us to dangers, excesses and shortfalls. Feelings enable us to respond to stimuli in all areas, from art through to Zen. A physiologically healthy individual responds with feelings to everything experienced. Emotions generate energy within us. Emotions are valuable. We have seen that emotions cause a chemical and energy reaction within us to confront challenges and appreciate pleasurable experiences. Emotions add depth to communication. They add force, depth and texture. The emotions of anger and fear. These are usually considered negative because they disrupt our harmonious existence in life. The disruptions, however, occur because of our failure to manage them properly rather than because the emotions themselves are bad. Because of our inability to manage them, anger and fear are often repressed, damaging our physiological health. These two emotions create a vibrational turbulence of our energy, blocking our ability to make sound decisions, to think rationally, to tap into our intuition, and to use our common sense. Feelings and emotions energize your thoughts. We've learned that by visualizing a mental image of a desired object or situation, you can attract it into your life. In this way, you can change and shape your life, behavior and circumstances. There are many effective techniques to achieve this. One such technique, immortalized by Shakti Gawan, is called creative visualization. The technique utilizes the power of thoughts, but thoughts alone are not enough to make things happen. Additional elements are required to transform your thoughts into action. These elements are your feelings and your emotions. So what would make you take action? A lifeless thought or one that's charged with emotion? People, action and thoughts charged with the energy of emotion or passion make a much stronger impact. For this reason, it's important to mix emotions with your thoughts. If you wish to make your thoughts a reality, feelings and emotions inject life into thoughts and make them produce effects in the external world, the same way that electricity makes appliances work. Both electricity and thoughts require some sort of energy to make them work and produce results. In order to bring your desires and thoughts into reality, you need to charge them with an emotional energy. Thoughts that are charged with emotional energy have a greater effect and can drive them into action. If you want to achieve anything through constructive thought, strategies such as creative visualization, you need to organize and energize your thoughts. You can do this by producing positive and happy feelings of success and happiness, and associating them with your goal. We've all had experiences of at least some sort of success or happiness in our lives. Even small experiences count. Remind yourself of one such or multiple such successes or experiences of happiness and relive how it felt in your imagination. Visualize the event or events as clearly as you can and let the positive and happy feelings of pleasure that you experienced and felt at that time come alive again. Relive and relish the happiness, the exhilaration and the feeling of happiness that you have brought back into your awareness. Whilst in this happier, constructive mental and emotional state, start visualizing your current goal, while at the same time continuing to relive in your imagination the feelings and emotions that you felt, those of success and happiness. Attach those feelings to your present goal. Feel as if you have already accomplished it and you are feeling great, happy and satisfied. This action alone will inject energy into your thoughts and make them stronger and increase the possibility and likelihood of you realizing your goal. With practice, you will arouse those happy feelings of success and accomplishment more easily without having to relive all those old experiences. By charging your thoughts with a fresh emotional energy, you can accomplish wonderful things. You set energy forces into action that will bring you more opportunities, tools or people necessary to accomplish your objectives or your goals. The law of emotion. You'll understand that emotions are the energy that turn a mere thought into reality. The more emotionally you feel something, the greater the effect that thought or event will have in your life. Emotion can be either constructive or destructive, depending on how you use it. 100% of the decisions that you make and the results that you will get are based on emotion. Everything you do is driven by an emotion of some kind. For many of my adult years, I focused on always applying logic, practically common sense. Learning about how emotions influence our lives taught me that if I only relied on the logical answer, I was cutting myself off from the benefits of those emotions that could help me make better decisions and achieve better outcomes. There are many hundreds of individual emotions, but there are only two driving motivating emotions, and those are love and fear. There's an image that's going to appear on screen that demonstrates fear versus love. Love or fear of some description are the main drivers behind most of what you do or don't do. Not surprisingly, our mental programming and conditioning produces consequences here too, finding ourselves involved in far more activity to avoid fear than to satisfy desire. Fear of all types paralyzes so many of us. So what are the common fears that we subject ourselves to? Well, here are some examples. Poverty or loss, criticism or disapproval, ill health, being taken advantage of, failure and rejection, to name a few. It's a sad reflection on our society that despite the opportunities for abundance and happiness that exist today, more so than ever before in the history of mankind, so many of us are trapped in thoughts tinged with fear. We know that like energy attracts like energy in the form of circumstances and people. It follows that the more you desire or fear something, the more likely you are to attract it into your life. An emotionless thought has no power to influence you one way or the other. An emotionless thought causes frustration and unhappiness. When you have clarity of thought, positive or negative, accompanied by an intense emotion of either fear or desire, you set the wheels of energy in motion to attract whatever it is toward you. Reject fear. Choose love. This is a popular refrain and wonderful advice. Many believe that there are only two primal emotions in the human being, love and fear, and that we cannot feel both at the same time. In the same way that light removes darkness, love can remove fear. The choice to reject fear and choose love can feel like something that only applies to moments of crisis. But in truth, the opportunity to choose love and reject fear presents itself in the smallest moments of life, and specifically in relationships with those closest to us. Love over fear is a choice every time someone tells us to do something about ourselves or has an experience of us that we don't want to hear. Can you see why it is so important for you to keep your thoughts on the things that you want and replace the thoughts of what you fear with more constructive thoughts of love? I'm not going to pretend that this is an easy process, but it is one that you must yearn for and aim towards if you want to achieve true happiness in your life. Someone may want to make more money so they can buy an impressive car, so they can feel better about themselves. Or we may have a friend who works 3 jobs because his wife has a potentially life-threatening illness and he doesn't have health insurance. These two are wildly different circumstances. One is based on fear, the feeling of inadequacy and the need to impress others with a car or a home. The other has its roots purely in love. The emotion that we allow to drive our thoughts and actions is what makes all the difference in how your life will turn out. An intended focus on love delivers the wealth of positive elements associated with it, whereas a tendency toward being driven by fear-related associations will inevitably deliver its associated negative elements. Here are a few examples on screen. The quote that you saw alongside that list on screen by John Lennon is one of my favourites about the fear and love aspects of life. Just to remind you, it goes like this. There are 2 basic motivating forces, fear and love. When we're afraid, we pull back from life. When we express and feel love, we are open to all that life has to offer with a passion, excitement and acceptance. We need to learn to love ourselves first, in all our glory and all our imperfections. If we cannot love ourselves, we cannot fully open to our ability to love others or our true potential to create. Evolution and all hopes for a better world rest in the fearlessness and open-hearted vision of people who embrace life. And I would add at the end, and love. The happiest and most successful men and women are aware of the power of their thoughts, and they are very conscious about keeping them positive and constructive. Your mind is such a powerful tool that you must control it with great discipline for it to consistently move you in the direction that you want to go. Changing the way that you think is not easy. I said earlier, it isn't an easy challenge. It may be the hardest thing that you ever do, but it will be the most valuable step to take and the one that is most worthwhile. Once you've made the firm choice to do something more important and valuable with your life, to achieve your own ideal of personal happiness, you absolutely must go to work on changing the way that you think. Emotions and the young. Imagine what our school systems would be like if we placed the same degree of importance on emotional well-being as we do on intellectual competency. When we arrive at the stage of human development, when our children understand how to express a full range of emotions such as fear, anger, peace, sadness, excitement and joy, they will learn at a much earlier point how to express emotional truth and how to develop good communication skills for healthy relationships. Our children would be so much better equipped to live full, satisfying lives, rich in experience, with skills to handle the ups and downs that come our way in this life. Emotional truth is something which is so lacking in our world. It's very simple and has its origins in childhood innocence. When it comes from this pure expression, it is immensely powerful. Let's look at negative emotions. Negative emotions are one of the main causes of unhappiness in life. Underachievement and failure are mainly caused by negative emotions. At their worst, negative emotions adversely affect our physical and mental health. If they are the cause, then the effects can be seen in ruined relationships, destroyed careers and wretched lives. They are harmful to you, and if allowed to thrive, they'll obstruct your path to happiness. Nothing is more important than the elimination of your negative emotions, whatever they may be, whatever their source. Peace of mind can only exist in the absence of negative emotions. You can't be negative and at peace at the same time. The two are in conflict. The deeper studies into this area took us, the more surprised we were to discover that most of the problems experienced in life had their origins in negative emotions of one kind or another. It became clear that if we could find a way to eliminate negative emotions, life would be more wonderful. By failing to eliminate negative emotions, it would prejudice all efforts and kill most of the joy and pleasure from anything that we accomplish. Destructive emotions have been responsible for more grief and pain than we care to admit. Negative emotions are completely unnecessary and unnatural to us. They serve no useful purpose, only destructive ones. They are the major cause for men and women to fail to grow and evolve. The good news is that you don't have to tolerate them at all if you consciously choose to get rid of them. Until I started to investigate this subject, I'd always assumed that negative emotions were normal responses, partly from parental conditioning, I assumed. I thought that they were a part of human nature, to be accepted as inevitable. After all, Mum and Dad had said it was natural, and mums and dads are always right, aren't they? Consider this. Have you ever seen a negative baby? Every negative emotion that we acquire as adults we had to learn, starting in childhood through a process of conditioning, programming, imitation, practice, repetition and reinforcement. Since negative emotions are learned, like most things, they can be unlearned. Don't worry if you've suffered with negative emotions for a long time. Suspend your disbelief for the time being and any resistance to the idea that they can be eliminated. They can. Whatever you choose to believe with feeling can become your reality. If you continue to believe that negative emotions are helpful to you, then they will remain a blight and a damaging curse on your life. However, you will know in your heart that the negative emotions that you've experienced and may still be carrying around serve no useful purpose for you. Accepting this is the first step to getting rid of them. So, let's look at that process, how to eliminate negative emotions. Remember the perception cycle. Your conscious mind can only hold one thought at a time, positive or negative, and you can deliberately choose that thought. You can replace a negative, destructive thought with a positive, constructive one, and in doing so, push the negative thought out of your mind. Whatever you feel, whenever you feel a negative emotion appearing, you can immediately cancel the thought that is causing the negative emotion by saying very firmly, I'm responsible for what I think. You are not welcome. I'm replacing you with whatever the more positive thought is. Being realistic, I accept that this takes practice and you may have to repeat the process more than once for it to become habitual, but it is worthwhile. This is the most powerful of all strategies for mental control. These words can put you back in control of your emotions. The words, I am responsible, switch your mind immediately from negative to positive. They make you feel calm and relaxed and let you see the situation with greater clarity. Your willingness to accept responsibility and the elimination of negative emotions will determine your future happiness and peace of mind. So isn't it worth it? Pause for a moment and think back over your entire life, your past and present if you like. Reflect on the influential events, the selections and people exercise that you completed in the session entitled How Did I Get Here? Scrutinise each of those memories or situations where you were the decision maker that makes you feel negative in any way. Then neutralise any negativity associated with it by simply saying, I am responsible, over and over. Bear with this. Whatever your difficulty or problem, you played a part. In most instances, you were free to choose, and you are still free. You probably knew all the time that you should not be doing it. You should not be making those choices or permitting it, but you went ahead anyway. So accept that you are absolutely, completely, 100% responsible for your situation, for the consequences of your decisions, because you can fix it. You might say, isn't accepting responsibility the same as accepting blame? Responsibility always looks forward to the future. Blame always looks backward to the past. To blame someone who is guilty, apportioning blame and guilt will not free your mind of negative emotions. Responsibility gives you back your control, self-reliance and proactiveness. Blame makes you feel angry, resentful and frustrated. Someone bumps into your car at a traffic light. Of course you're not at fault. You're not happy about it, but you're responsible for the way that you react now. You are responsible for how you conduct yourself. You can show anger and other negative emotions, or be mature and calm and controlled about it. The choice is yours. Why should you feel even more unhappy because you made the wrong choice about the emotion that you applied in those circumstances? And how you will feel is determined by how you decide to react, not by the circumstances themselves. Responsibility or irresponsibility, positive or negative, happiness or bitterness, the choice is yours. Clean your windows. Bear with me on this one. If you knew what that other person did to me, you'd never expect me to accept responsibility. But here is the key lesson learned. The perpetuation of the negative emotion in your mind is enough to sabotage your chances for happiness. Even one negative emotion or piece of blame or anger can interfere with your peace of mind indefinitely. To illustrate this critical point, imagine that you've just purchased a beautiful house in your dream location with wonderfully peaceful panoramic views, perfect in every detail. But there is only one problem. The windows are so coated in dust and grime that you can't see out. If everything in this house is perfect except for those dirty windows, what would happen if you didn't clean them? The answer is that you'd eventually forget what a beautiful view that you'd inherited, and it's likely that the house would not seem so appealing. You can't see the wonderful view for the dirty windows. I'm sure you can see the comparison that we're drawing here. The world is full of people who are just like that new house, and you may be one of them. Possibly they're intelligent, good looking, well educated, and may seem to have everything going for them, but their lives just never seem to contain the reality of happiness contained in their dreams. Almost always this is because they're holding on to at least one negative experience from their past, for which they are refusing to accept responsibility. They're refusing to clean their dirty windows, if you like. They're still blaming someone or something for a hurt that they suffered eons ago. Generations of people from all cultures, many of whom have reached and past middle age, are still angry and resentful over something that happened to them in childhood. These unresolved issues of bitterness affect their relationships with their spouses and their children, their colleagues and their friends. It shows itself in psychosomatic illnesses, and in the most extreme cases can even lead to early death. Thousands of psychotherapists have become very wealthy on the back of helping people to deal with these unresolved emotions of anger, guilt and resentment. The cure comes when he or she can identify what is holding him or her back. Face it honestly and release it. Let it go. You can accomplish very much the same thing by identifying any feelings of negativity that you have toward anyone, accepting responsibility for the situation and releasing it. Let it go. The emotional brain. On screen now for you is a short video explaining the biological processing of what happens to emotions as they enter and pass through the brain. The cingulate cortex. This part of the cortex is closest to the limbic system, performing difficult tasks or experiencing intense love, anger or lust, causes activity in the anterior cingulate cortex, the ACC, and it causes the activity to increase. This area has been found to be active when mothers hear infants crying. The ACC contains unusual neurons called spindle cells, which may be particularly concerned with detecting how others feel and reacting to their emotions. You'll hear more of the function of the ACC in the sessions later in the course on brain and love. The stria terminalis. This is part of the network of pathways that link the amygdala to other parts of the brain. The stria terminalis plays a part in anxiety and stress responses. Cell density differs in men and women and may play a part in gender identification. For example, transsexuals have been found to have a cell structure that matches the typical pattern of the sex to which they are changing. The frontal cortex. Information from the limbic system is fed to the frontal cortex to produce conscious feelings, while conscious knowledge about the environment is fed from the cortex back to the limbic system in a continuous loop. The effect of emotion on thought is stronger than vice versa, probably because there are more nerve tracts carrying signals up from the limbic system than passing signals back downwards. The corpus callosum. The corpus callosum, or CC, plays an important role in transmitting emotions between the left and the right hemispheres of the brain. It's a strip of almost what looks like elastic between the two hemispheres of the brain. Women on average have a greater density of fibres in the corpus callosum than men. This may account for some differences between the sexes in emotional responses. The hypothalamus and mammillary body. The hypothalamus is a tiny part of the brain, but it has complex and widespread effects. It acts as a hormonal signaler and transmitter, affecting bodily reactions to the environment and causing the sensations we feel as emotion. It also mediates the fear reaction made by the amygdala. The mammillary bodies, which connect to the hippocampus via the fornix, lie at the interface between memory and emotion. Amygdala. The amygdala is a tiny part of the brain that is most centrally and exclusively concerned with emotions. This area assesses both external and internal information for threat level and emotional significance. The hippocampus. The hippocampus is mainly concerned with encoding and retrieving memories. Personal or episodic memories include an emotional component. So the hippocampus, by calling these up, creates a replay of emotions from the past. These may blend with current emotions, or they may override them. When a sudden memory of something sad blights a happy moment. Thalamus. The thalamus acts as a distribution centre for incoming information and is therefore involved in more or less every activity. However, some of the thalamic nuclei have a particularly strong influence on emotions because they shunt emotionally salient stimuli to the appropriate limbic area, such as the amygdala and the olfactory cortex for further processing or action. The olfactory complex. The olfactory bulbs carry messages about smell, straight to the limbic area. Unlike the pathways serving the other senses, which pass signals via the thalamus to the cortex for processing. This is why sense creates such an intense, instant emotional response. The olfactory complex is thought to be the brain's original emotional centre and probably evolved before sight and hearing. What follows is an exercise on emotional expression. Just for fun, try this exercise. On pages 108 and 109 of the transcript guidebook that accompanies the course, there is a list of emotions and feelings. Find a place where you can experience peace and quiet, uninterrupted. As you read the emotions on the list, select an emotion to play with. Soak up the emotion. Think of circumstances or people that will allow you to experience the emotion fully. This is in your imagination now. Invite the emotion into your mind, whether it involves positive or negative qualities to you. Allow each emotion you select to become your friend. The more deeply you role play with each emotion, the more you will become aware of the physiological changes each emotion creates within you. After you've done this and you are able to feel the emotion fully in your body, now say the words, I feel excited, or I feel shy, or I feel fearful, or I feel threatened. Whatever the feeling is that the emotion has created in you. Then notice how much of the emotion is conveyed through the words. Not to judge yourself, but to be able to get more and more comfortable with full emotional expression. Some emotions will be fun and easy. Others will be more difficult and may even be painful. It all depends on what your past experience has been and how committed you are to actually trying this project fully. Many of the emotions will bring up memories for you, and this is a wonderful and healthy experience. The more open you are to feeling whatever is there for you, the more transformed and healed you will become ultimately. Each emotion is a treasure, a gift of experience for you to broaden the quality of your life. Remember that all emotions are just different versions, variations of the same energy, which is love. When you get comfortable with the emotion, try using it constructively in the world. Use 3 little simple words, I feel happy, with someone you are close to. Children are wonderful to practice on. They'll understand and respond. Focus on the emotional content. You can even express the emotion without the words. Do it facially. Then practice with adults as well. Don't be attached to others' responses, but focus on enjoying your own expression. That's the purpose of this exercise. It's for your own health, truth and expression, who you are. Whatever others do with your expression, well, that's up to them. Truth attracts truth. Your true and pure expression of emotion will most likely stimulate some kind of inner emotional truth for them as well, even if they don't display it or express it. It may be fear, anger, delight or defensiveness. Whatever the response is, appreciate what is unfolding in them. You might also use this list to check in with yourself periodically throughout the day to ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? See if you can identify the feeling, put a word to it or a label to it, or just refer to the list to find an emotion that fits how you're feeling. Another way to use this list is as a game of emotional charades. One person acts out the emotion whilst the other guesses the emotion. You can do this between lovers to add emotional depth to the relationship. Also, it will help to teach your children to identify their own feelings and emotions so they can recognise them more easily. The bottom line is to have fun and to learn as much as you can about yourself from the experience. That brings this session, Feelings and Emotions, to a close. I hope you found this and the first 10 sessions informative and useful. That was part 1 of the course. I trust that each of the sessions, together with the end of section exercises, have been a source of discovery as to how you arrived at your present state of happiness and fulfillment. The really exciting part of this work and this course comes up next in part 2. And coming up in part 2, the next session, which is session 11, is the power of the brain, where you'll be able to understand in simple terms how your wonderful brain is constructed and can be made to work for you. How your every thought leaves an impression, and how changing your thoughts will change your experiences of happiness. Discover what parts of the brain have an impact on your emotional states of happiness, and what parts of the brain perform what functions in your life. Thank you for watching this session, and I look forward to seeing you in part 2, session 11, the power of the brain. Thank you.